Alright, here's the deal. I didn't really know what to make for a video. I was going to talk about putting coilovers on your Scion. I was maybe going to make a video on my truck, or I was going to make a video talking about how to give your car more personality. You want to put coilovers on your Scion Tc. Here's the deal. I'm just going to talk to you guys about a couple things first before you go ahead and do that and make your final decision. This is all just based off of my experience and my experience only. If you find that I'm lisping my words, it's because my lips are frozen because it's like 20 degrees outside. So here we got my 2005 Scion Tc. So I'm just going to sit down and talk to you guys while I freeze my nuts off. You know what? I'm going to go get myself hot chocolate. All right. So you want to upgrade your Scion Tc to coilovers. Here's the deal. It really depends on what you want. I mean, this video is pretty self-explanatory to an extent. I'll explain to you the details of what it is that I have done to my car, and then I'll kind of use that as a baseline for everyone else to see what it is that they want to do. On my car, I have Raceland coilovers. They were like 500 bucks. I would call them middle grade coilovers, but they're more like middle to low end grade coilovers. When it comes to price and I guess you can say performance, they're essentially, in my opinion, they're an OEM plus type of coilover. They're soft enough to be on the street. They're not like stiff enough for competition, or like, you know, if you really want to get the maximum performance out of your car. They're just a good all-around coilover, and I love the way that this car handles. It's actually, right now, it's way better than my Celica, and my Celica has BCs on it. Comfortability wise, drivability wise, performance wise, I think they're just a good all-around coilover. Now, a mistake that like everybody makes when they build a street car, because it's like 90% of people who put coilovers on their car, they end up just putting like BCs or like really stiff coilovers on it. They spend all this money, and I think for no reason. And it's just like, for a car that you're driving on the street, do you really need to put BC Racing or, you know, any kind of other high performance coilovers on your car? I guess if you're looking at it from a point of like maybe adjustability and parts and stuff like that, it's a lot more like easily accessible. Stuff like eBay coilovers, I feel like it's a bit of a hit or miss. My girlfriend's Scion Tc has a set of eBay coilovers. I don't remember the brand name, but they're not even coilovers that you can get out of the box. I remember I bought a set of used coilovers for her car, and they ended up being broken. The strut bodies were all wobbly, so I ended up finding another set of coilovers that had a good strut body off of like, I think it was like an Acura maybe, or some kind of Honda, and the thread pitch on the strut body was like the same as all the coilover collars and the thread-on spindle part. So I was just combining the coilovers together to make one good coilover, or two technically, for both the fronts. And it ended up working out pretty well, and they're still on the car right now. It feels pretty soft. It's a little stiffer than Raceland's. For some reason, the eBay coilovers, when they call them like a performance coilover, they just make them like really stiff. And you know, because I guess they just want it to be a performance coilover for cheap. I don't really trust them. They're not really that durable. I mean, you do get what your money's worth, but if you feel like changing your coilovers out once a year, then, you know, that's whatever. It also depends on how you drive, like, or in where you live. Like, do you hit potholes every 5 seconds, or do you actually like try and avoid them a little bit? You know, the natural wear and tear. Personally, if I had to do it again, and especially if you're trying to do things on a budget, I would keep the factory shock absorbers. You can get a set of them for like 30 bucks a side, which isn't bad at all. And you know, I have some TRD lowering springs sitting in my shed right now that have I actually cut an extra like quarter of a coil off, or like half a coil off, to make it sit a little lower. And it was on my car when I bought them, and the car sat pretty good when I got the car. I remember when I first bought this car, the shocks were completely blown out with the TRD lowering springs, and I took it to the track, and surprisingly it handled extremely well. Like, these cars are just out of the box, these cars handle pretty damn good. But a lot of the people, like I said, when they're trying to lower their car, they have to get like this super high performance coilover and just drop the car to the ground, and then they don't set it up right, and then they screw around with the preload, and then it just screws everything up. A lot of the times the way things come is they're good out of the box. Like, if you get like a BC coilover or any type of coilover that's like on that level or higher, you know, yeah, like I said, you got that adjustability where you can really fine tune the ride height. These race lands don't have a lot of adjustability. You can get, I'm pretty sure for this type of coilover, these are the Raceland Classics, you can get things like hammer and caster plates, I'm pretty sure. But what I did is I ended up putting the, for a Scion specifically, you can get an adjuster bolt that goes in the top of the spindle, and it adjusts the spindle if you want extra camber or not, if you don't want to get camber caster plates for your coilovers. Yeah, I mean, adjustability wise, they're not the best on the planet, but I can, essentially the ride height operates based on the preload of the coil. So if the coils are on their max preload, it's going to raise the car as high as it possibly can. If they're on their lowest preload and the car is lower to the ground, it's going to kind of soften up the suspension a little bit and set the coils on their softest preload, spring preload. So it'll make your ride feel a lot softer the lower you go, which is, I guess, a good thing in a sense. Maybe not if you're trying to, you know, go really low and then you go over a bump and you rub, because the suspension is so soft that the body just kind of wiggles and bounces up and down. But honestly, I do track stuff with this car, and it's also like a street car, and it's also like a part daily, and it's just a beater around car. I got tools in it, you know. I do a lot with this car, and it's just a good all-around coilover. With all my tools in the back, the car sits level. Without the tools, it does sit a little higher in the rear than it does in the front. And I feel like that's a common thing when you put coilovers on these for some reason. The body of the coilover itself, on a lot of the coilovers I see for these, are so tall that even when you lower a lot of the coilovers down to their maximum adjustment, the rear end of the car likes to sit higher on these than most. I could lower the car more, but I like it where it's at. I think it handles really good at the track. I wouldn't want to mess it up. I'm not looking for like stancy pants stuff like everybody else, and just trying to make their car as low as possible, or, you know, whatever. I'm not doing anything crazy. BCs are probably, I would say, a little higher middle of the grade coilovers. I wouldn't say middle grade, they're a little higher, especially nowadays, like $1,000 or more for a set of coilovers, just based on how much everything costs nowadays. I would say that's a little more higher end, even if the performance you're getting out of them isn't higher end. Just cost wise, I'd say it's higher end, because first of all, if you own a TC in the first place, chances are you probably aren't a millionaire. You probably, you know, own this car because you know it's just a good car. And a lot of these cars right now, they're under a cult following. I'm not part of that cult yet, but I do own one, and I do like the way that they perform. So I'd say $1,000 is like middle to higher end right about now, and that's where your typical average BCs kind of land. I'd say things like Racelands are kind of middle to lower grade. If you want a middle grade, I don't know, there's stuff like Godspeed and stuff like that. I wouldn't say that that's true middle grade, but I'm going based off of price points and like mental reviews that I've seen people leave comments on for different types of coilovers. And it's a little bit of a mixed bag unless you buy like name brand stuff. It's strange to me because I actually have never had a problem with the Raceland in my life. One thing that was really important to me when I bought these coilovers is that it had a lifetime warranty, and I mean lifetime. I wanted to confirm that it wasn't like a 2-year lifetime or extended lifetime warranty or limited lifetime warranty. Like, I wanted to make sure that there was a lifetime warranty. So me owning the life of this vehicle, if I ever have a problem with any of my coilovers, like they start to leak or they're soft or they crack or they break or the strut body goes bad or something, I can just return it and get a new one. Or they sometimes don't even run returns. They'll just send you out a new set for free, and you can just put them on your car. So that was a big thing for me. Free suspension. You know, you change it once, you never have to change it again. Well, you do if it goes bad, but you know, you're getting them for free, so at that point it's a good deal for you. I would just be very wary of the eBay coilover stuff. You can get the eBay coilover stuff, you know, 250 bucks, $300, and it might work fine for your car, but definitely do your research. Look around as much as you possibly can, and I recommend that you read reviews. I also recommend that when you buy the product, you also leave a review, because you're just letting other people know, and you're letting other people be aware of, you know, what is a bad coilover and what is a good coilover. You know, I see all these coilovers that are just spray painted different colors from eBay, and they're all different brands, but they're literally all the same coilover. Yeah, they might change in construction a little bit, granted, if it's the same company or not, who knows. My hot chocolate's already cold. I would recommend to a majority of people, this is just my personal preference, I think it would just be good for a lot of people, I would recommend using your factory coil springs. And I mean, here's the deal, you know, it'll take more time, but it depends on what you want. A lot of people from I see they just want to see their car lower. They're not really too concerned about performance. They're not really too concerned about, you know, especially people who own TCs are not too concerned about the people, you know, how to going super fast or handling or comfort. A lot of people just want the visual aspect, which is just seeing their car be lowered. Now, mind you, this doesn't really affect that bad ride quality. If anything, it might actually, it could improve it a bit. It depends on what you mean by improve. If you think a little stiffer or firmer suspension is improvement, or a little bit of a softer suspension is improvement, that depends on what you like and what you want. But if I were to do it again and I was really trying to do things on a budget, I would have kept my factory shocks. I probably would have cut a coil off of them, but luckily the car came with TRD lowering springs. I needed to replace the shocks. I should have just put factory shocks on the car and just left my lowering springs on it. But you know, I'm not really too concerned about it. I have them now, they're lifetime warranty. But yeah, I'm always trying to do things more on a budget, and to me, it's that doing something like that is splurging a little bit. I don't think in order to make something that's really nice on your car, you need to spend a whole lot of money. Like, I think nowadays people think they need to spend thousands of dollars to make the car exactly how they want, and I just think that I'm gonna say this again. Nowadays, it just doesn't make any sense. I think that trying to figure out how to do things on a budget is way more important when it comes to modifying your car. You know, it helps you be a little creative, and you can just do things, and you know, you're saving money. And yeah, you might be spending a little bit of time, and sometimes time is of the essence to a lot, especially nowadays. But if you just take your time and be patient and believe in the process, and don't shoot yourself down, then you should be able to get the result you want. I wouldn't recommend getting the eBay coils at all. That's just my honest opinion. You can. I just feel like you're playing a gamble, but the odds are 90 to 10. I mean 90 to 10 out of 100. You'll be wasting your time, you'll be wasting your money, and then you'll kind of get self-defeated after you put them on and you're about 1,000 miles in, and then they start making noise and clattering and clacking around, and I don't think it's worth it. A lot of the times, like I said, if you just want to lower your car, do what the factory recommends. So put factory shocks on the car, and this isn't factory recommended, but it does work. Cutting coil springs is becoming a lot more popular again. A lot of people frown on cutting coil springs, but just cutting a link out of your coil spring will, help significantly lower your car. And if obviously, start by cutting. If you want your car, if your car is the factory ride height, I'm sorry, I'm freezing. If your car is the factory ride height, cut a link out of it, put it all back, put it on the car, drive it around for a little bit, let it settle, do your thing. And then, if you feel like you need to go lower, cut another half a link out, or another full link, or another quarter of a link, and that'll be that. And then your ride height will be set, and then that's it. People are concerned about the coil spring popping out of the perch or something like that. I don't really see that happen, especially if you install them properly inside your car. That's where really the problem lies, is people aren't installing them in the car properly, and then they start to make noise and they're not functioning right. Cutting a coil spring is probably going to make your ride a lot softer. It might rely on the shock more. You have to worry about the shock bottoming out, but I wouldn't worry about it. It's not like you're going to be cutting so much off the coil spring. The max I would cut off any factory coil spring is like 2 full coils, and even that's pushing it a little bit. I would probably do like a coil, see where it sits, and then if it's good enough to where it's like an inch lower, usually a coil based on factory coil spring rates, you could cut a coil out of it or one link and it'll probably drop the car an inch, and a lot of the times it's really all you need. You might need to cut a little bit more off like the front versus the rear or something like that, if you're really trying to save money. But I mean, let's think about it this way. What's stopping you from getting a lowering spring? If you were to get a lowering spring for $200 versus an eBay coil for $200, I feel like getting a $200 lowering spring is a lot more beneficial. I'm going to make this quick because I'm freezing. Get a name brand like a Megan Racing or something like that, Ebach, something like that, lowering spring, and it tells you the exact amount that the car is going to be lowered after you install them. And you can put it back on your factory suspension and call it a day. You could always try and get like the Coney orange struts or the yellow struts or something like that, or the E-Box or something, or I don't know, just something, the Bilsteins, to try and make your factory suspension perform more. Then it's like, all right, now you're like in the territory of OEM plus, and at that point you might as well put a coilover on it. There's a lot of things you need to think about. Price wise, I always try and do things for free as much as I can, or I try and repurpose things to make them work for me. I would just start by using what you have. That is honestly how I would start. People try and do things in reverse nowadays. They try and buy the best possible thing or spend a ton of money, and then they get disappointed when it doesn't work out. The way I see it is start with what you have, use it to your advantage, and if it doesn't work out, you won't get disappointed, because it's what you have, and you're into it for $0 or close to $0. It'll have a lot more testing and tuning, but I feel like the rewards would be worth it if you really truly believe in the process. All right, I'm done. I'm freezing. That's kind of my general synopsis. I'm not a super technical guy. I'm not going to sit down with you and make a video essay. I get so many fucking comments, and they're just like, you need to stop making videos like this, and you need to focus and make videos and study the topic and analyze the No. First of all, I can make whatever video I want, okay? I'm not a super technical guy. I'm not going to study up on something when it's for what? I'm giving you my general opinion, and based off of my little experience, you can take it with a grain of salt and then do more research elsewhere. You can go watch a video breakdown on the science and history behind the coilover suspension somewhere else. I do think that stuff's interesting, but I'd rather just sit down and have a serious conversation with people based on what we know instead of hyper analyzing every little topic. So this is my channel, and that's my thoughts on what you should do with your coilovers on your Scion Tc. I'm freezing my nuts off. I can't feel my fingers or my toes and my cheeks, and my hot chocolate is actually starting to freeze. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you later.